Ukrainian troops have advanced in the Pokrovsk direction. This is stated in a report by the Institute for the Study of War. It is noted that Ukrainian forces recently advanced along Lenin Street in western Novoyelyazvetovka, southwest of Pokrovsk, and liberated Nadiyevka, west Novoyelyazvetovka. At the same time, Russian milbloggers claimed that Ukrainian troops had advanced to the western outskirts of Solenoe, southwest of Pokrovsk. ISW does not confirm the claim of a Russian milblogger who reported that units of the Russian 90th Tank Division allegedly advanced to the center of Troitskoye and that Russian forces captured Bogdanovka, both southwest of Pokrovsk. The analysts also added that the Russian troops were advancing northeast from Pokrovsk near Tarasovka, also east of Pokrovsk, Elizavetovka, Vodyanoye Vtoroye, Luch, south of Pokrovsk near Zeleny and Vozrozhdenie, and southwest of Pokrovsk near Udachny, Novosergievka, Nadeyevka, Uspenovka, Kotlinoye, Novoukrainka, Kotlyarovka, Sukha Balka, Bogdanovka, and towards Muravka. Russia is concentrating its main offensive efforts on the Pokrovsk sector in Donetsk Oblast, but is stalling and failing to advance. Pokrovsk, situated about 70 kilometers northwest of Donetsk, remains one of the most hotly contested areas of the front. Syrsky previously claimed that 7,000 Russian soldiers were killed near the town in January alone. In February, the situation near Pokrovsk somewhat stabilized, with the Ukrainian military saying that Russian troops were bogged down near the city. Ukrainian artillerymen, returning from a 5-day rotation on the Pokrovsk front, expressed doubts about the likelihood of a sustained ceasefire with Russia. The soldiers, part of the 59th Assault Brigade, have been operating at an undisclosed location on the Pokrovsk front, where they have been safeguarding the flanks of the embattled city. The soldiers spoke of past experience with Russia-backed separatists who have repeatedly violated ceasefires since the conflict began in 2014 in eastern Ukraine and conveyed a general distrust towards the Russian leadership. For months, Ukrainian troops have been repelling Russian assaults around the city. Moscow's forces have been slowly advancing with the aim of capturing the entire region. The Russian T-80 tank has become an expensive steel coffin for the occupiers on the Ukrainian front, writes 1945 columnist and retired U.S. Army Special Forces non-commissioned officer Steve Balestrieri. The war in Ukraine has been a disaster for Russia and its armored forces, with some 3,000 tanks destroyed or abandoned in what dictator Vladimir Putin calls a special military operation. Most of the losses were in the T-72 and T-90, but the T-80 fared even worse. The Russian army acted overconfidently with poor training and tactics. The promised modernization turned out to be a myth, and the statements about the renewal of the army in the spirit of NATO did not correspond to reality. Russia itself contradicted the Gerasimov doctrine. Battalion Tactical Groups, BTGs, introduced in 2012, were supposed to provide command flexibility, but instead commanders' initiative was replaced by rigid adherence to plans, even when they became irrelevant. BTGs, which consisted of tank or infantry battalions reinforced by artillery and other means, failed, and the Russian army returned to Soviet methods. The T-80 was developed on the basis of the T-64, receiving a compact engine, automatic loading of the 125mm gun and composite armor. However, the automatic loading was unsafe, and the location of the ammunition inside the fighting compartment made the tank vulnerable. When hit, the turret often came off. The T-80 was an exception in Soviet tank building. It was expensive and complex. The SG-1000 gas turbine engine provided a speed of up to 70 kilometers an hour, but consumed excessive amounts of fuel. Like other Soviet tanks, its 2A46N1 Rapira gun had limited aiming angles, which made urban combat difficult. The cost of the T-80 was 3.5 times higher than the price of the T-64. After its unsuccessful use in Chechnya, the T-80 was not used in the Second Chechen War, the 2008 conflict with Georgia, and the 2014 war in Ukraine. However, in 2022, after significant losses of T-72s and T-90s, Russia was forced to send the T-80 into battle, where it also suffered heavy losses. Since the invasion, Russia has lost hundreds of T-80s and, according to some sources, up to 1,000 units. The tank's survivability problems have become obvious. The main T-80 production plant was in Kharkov, Ukraine. Ukraine also uses the T-80, but this plays into its hands since the Ukrainian military is well aware of the weak points of this machine. The expert concluded that the T-80 has become a shameful disappointment for the Russian army. Russia does not produce new tanks, except for the T-90M Proryev. All other tanks are modernized from Soviet designs. Military expert and editor-in-chief of Defense Express, Oleg Katov, noted. At the same time, the expert raised alarm with the statement that the Russian Federation is increasing the production of military products, modernization, repairs, etc.
Satellite images analyzed by the Associated Press show the deployment of at least 6 nuclear-capable B-2 Spirit bombers to Camp Thunder Bay on Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. The presence of the bombers comes as the United States continues an intense airstrike campaign targeting Yemen's Houthi rebels. The intense campaign of airstrikes in Yemen under U.S. President Donald Trump, targeting the rebels over their attacks on shipping in Mideast waters stemming from the Israel-Hamas war, has killed at least 65 people, according to casualty figures released by the Houthis. The campaign appears to show no signs of stopping as the Trump administration again linked their airstrikes on the Iranian-backed Houthis to an effort to pressure Iran over its rapidly advancing nuclear program. While so far giving no specifics about the campaign and its targets, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt put the overall number of strikes on Tuesday at more than 200. The B-2 has been used in combat to target the Houthis in the past. Tensions also remain high between Iran and the U.S. over Tehran's rapidly advancing nuclear program. The B-2 would be crucial in potentially bombing Iran's underground nuclear sites.